you seem to be a man for justice and telling stories that, what you just said, open, expand people's awareness about what's going on in the world and around them, and how it affects their lives, and inviting them, I think even in your writing, which we'll get into in a bit, inviting them to be and stay aware and be like present for what's going on around them and not have like sort of, the wool pulled over their eyes or just not see. When or how was that kind of a spirit born, and how has that translated in your educational career and getting you here? Because you have, degrees in history and yes, yeah. So how did, is this a family, like sometimes some of this is genetic? Is it just, talk about how it happened and how it evolved?
Well, both my parents are people who don't suffer fools easily. They don't go along with the crowd. So I definitely owe a lot to them for just having a skeptical mindset about a lot of things. My grandparents on my mother's side were, my grandfather was a teacher. He was a writer of poetry.
Oh, nice.
And he and his friend, he was what's known as a fellow traveler, which is a term that isn't used too much anymore, but a lot of his friends were persecuted by the McCarthy,
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Thing in the 50s. So I grew up with a awareness of what was going on politically in that sense, and of course growing up during Watergate and all that just kind of intensified that. But I think it's also a very personal thing. I mean, for me, I was just talking about this with somebody else the other night about drugs. Like I always wanted to be able to hang out and do drugs with my friends. That was the generation I came from, but I couldn't because I can't even wear sunglasses during the summer. I don't like having filters. I really want.
You want to keep it.
I want to see the world the way it is, and even if it's really nasty. And I think my practice of Buddhism allows me to look at even the darkest and the worst of things and not give up hope. Not see it in a totally murky light, because I see there's always a glimmer of possibility and hope there. But I just, there's so much that people don't want to look at in our society, whether they self-medicate themselves or whether they just kind of self-entertain themselves, whatever they do to avoid the unpleasant. It's to me, I never want to see really, what I call bubblegum movies. When I go out to movies, it's not just entertainment. I want to see something
that rocks your world a little bit.
Yeah,
morally and socially and
people who still regard movies as a kind of entertainment, like they'll just look at me strangely and like, why would you want to do that on a night out? And to me, it's not something that's I'm giving up any kind of entertainment value for. It's entertaining. It's thought-provoking. It gets you thinking.
Right, and it may inspire somebody to go take some kind of action for the world that they didn't know because of they were moved by the work or the writing or the film or, even your film that you came here, so long ago seeing. There was a lot there was a lot going on in that film.
It's really interesting. I have this thing about immigrants, and that was about immigrants, right, or about, And then 4 years after that movie, or 3 years, I ended up writing an article for a Buddhist publication about Daisaku Ikeda's peace proposals to the UN, and this whole idea of the global citizen, what's a global citizen, and comparing it to the work of Hannah Arendt, who I'm a big fan of, who talked about people who were displaced after World War II, displaced because they didn't have a country anymore. They weren't citizens of any country. So that's kind of a, and then interestingly, 3 or 4 years, then that kind of took me back to grad school. All the stuff I'm filling you in on the last 20 years, I went back to grad school to study international affairs, and ended up making a documentary at the J School, at the Journalism School of Columbia, about, it was during the bombing of Kosovo. But the bombing of Serbia, excuse me,
right.
And by the Clinton administration, and making a film, a documentary about illegal refugees who are coming here from Kosovo and being held in detention and